Before we get into the video, could everyone please subscribe to my Endless Diary Tales channel? Thank you so much. Looking at the classroom I had dreamed countless times of returning to, my nose tingled and my chest tightened with emotions I couldn't suppress. In my past life, I was one of the top students in my class, better than even Ethan Carter. But after marrying him on the day of the college entrance exam, I got terrible food poisoning and missed the test. Not long after, despite taking precautions, I found myself pregnant. Under relentless persuasion from Ethan's family, I had no choice but to give up on retaking the exam. For 10 months, I carried my child while still working in the fields, struggling to earn money to support Ethan and his younger sister, Rachel Carter, through school. But misfortunes never come alone. Not long after, my father was killed by a wild boar while trying to save Ethan. My mother, devastated by grief, passed away soon after. My older brother, heartbroken and resentful toward me, left for the South to work and never came back. Seeing that I had become an orphan with no one to rely on, Ethan's family shamelessly moved into my house. From that moment on, I became their tireless servant. I worked endlessly to put Ethan through school, supporting him until he became a university professor. But once he achieved success, he started looking down on me, calling me uncultured and dull, saying we had nothing in common. He complained that all I ever cared about was saving a few cents on groceries, that my world revolved around cooking oil, salt, and trivial neighborhood gossip. He found me unbearably boring. And just like that, I endured his disdain for half my life. Until one day, while cleaning, I finally opened the locked box he had always forbidden me from touching. He used to explode in rage whenever I even brushed against it. Only then did I realize how much of a joke my life had been. Ethan had been with Jessica Lane all along behind my back. Even his university tuition had come from my hard-earned money. No wonder he was always telling me expenses were high and that money was tight. I couldn't find a stable job, so I scrubbed dishes at restaurants, saving every penny I could. My hands cracked and blistered in the winter from washing so many dishes, the pain unbearable. Yet I couldn't even bring myself to buy a single bottle of hand cream. Meanwhile, they were spending my money, living their best lives, standing on their moral high ground and criticizing me, blaming me for coming between them. Even my own children had known about their relationship long ago. They had helped them hide it from me. I felt ice cold all over. My hands trembled as I dialed Ethan's number, my throat tightening so much that I couldn't even get a word out. He was impatient, about to hang up when I finally managed to speak. I know everything about you and Jessica. Good, then there's nothing left to hide from you. I couldn't understand how a person could be this shameless. A sharp pain spread through my chest, making it hard to breathe. I wanted my son to take me to the hospital, but he only gave me a comp. I looked at my mother with a complicated expression and said, "Mom, just let it go. If you hadn't deliberately fallen into that lake back then, Dad never would have married you. You wasted half his life, and you haven't been happy either. What's the point? Deliberately fallen into the lake? Yes, I once had feelings for Ethan Carter, but when he rejected me, I let go of those feelings. He saved me from drowning that day, and for the sake of our reputations, he had no choice but to marry me. I had always felt guilty about it, and always tried to make it up to him. I explained to him so many times it was just an accident. I never even knew he was nearby, but he never believed me. And now he was openly bringing Jessica Lane into our home. Jessica was older, yet she looked 20 years younger than me. Her hair was neatly combed, pinned with a pearl hair clip, and she wore stylish leather shoes. Meanwhile, after a lifetime of exhaustion, my face was worn by time. I wore faded cloth shoes, and held a freshly changed diaper for my grandson in my hands. The contrast was stark. I had lost completely. With a look of pure disgust, Ethan said, "We never officially registered our marriage anyway. You can stay here with our son, but from now on, I'll be living with Jessica. Let's consider this the end." The son and daughter I had raised with endless sacrifices, the daughter-in-law I had spent my life savings to bring into the family, stood by Jessica's side, looking at me with impatience as if she was their real family. They urged me to let go of my resentment toward Ethan, told me to stop clinging to him, and told me to set him free. Overwhelmed by disappointment, sorrow, and fury, I coughed up blood and collapsed, losing consciousness. As I came to, I saw the 2 sweet potatoes inside my school bag, and memories slowly returned. How wonderful! Heaven had given me another chance. This time, I would never marry Ethan Carter again. I looked around at my classmates. The memories felt so distant that I could barely recall their names. In my past life, most of them had successful careers while I was trapped in a tiny kitchen, spending my days cooking for others. Even the one time I wanted to buy a new outfit to attend a class reunion, my son William Carter returned it. He was afraid I'd embarrass his father. But this life would be different. Autumn, what are you standing there for? Ethan hasn't eaten yet. Hurry up and bring him something before class starts. My deskmate Lisa Green called out to me. I snapped out of my thoughts. Back then, our village was 10 miles away from school. The cafeteria food was too expensive, so most students brought their own meals and only ate twice a day. Once in the morning and once at night when they returned home. Skipping breakfast meant having no energy to get through the day, let alone focus on studying. Even though Ethan had made it clear that he didn't like me, I still felt sorry for him. He often skipped breakfast and ended up so dizzy with hunger that he could barely sit straight. I used to save my own food and give it to him. Ting only a little myself because of that, I developed chronic stomach issues in the second half of my life. Even when I could afford to eat well, my body couldn't handle rich or greasy foods. I could only watch others enjoy while I sat there empty-handed. Ethan lifted his head from his desk and shot Lisa and me a cold glance. No need, I'm not hungry. But I could see his hand pressing against his stomach, his brows slightly furrowed. He was obviously in pain, struggling to endure it. In my past life, it was this forced display of strength that had drawn me to him. Back then, when no one had enough to eat, I practically begged him to take most of my breakfast. Every time he finished eating, he would put on a reluctant face, saying he'd return the food to me later, but it was all talk. He never once gave me anything back. I must have been crazy in my past life. How could I have ever thought a man like him was charming? Looking at him now, pretending to be miserable, I felt nothing but disgust. I didn't even want to spare him another glance. Turning away, I peeled the skin off a roasted sweet potato and took a big bite. Even though it had gone cold, it was still delicious. And in just a few bites, I had finished both of them. When Ethan realized I wasn't going to offer him any food, his expression darkened. He looked at me puzzled, as if he couldn't believe what he was seeing. I ignored him and quickly flipped through my textbook. Even though many years had passed, failing the college entrance exam had always been my biggest regret in my past life. I secretly studied my children's textbooks whenever I had the chance. If it hadn't been for all the responsibilities tying me down, I would have gotten my degree long ago, even if it was just through self-study. Now these subjects weren't unfamiliar to me. There were 6 months left until the exam. This time I was determined to get into the university I wanted. I would make something of myself. As soon as class ended, I packed up my things and rushed home. In my past life, if it hadn't been for Ethan, my parents never would have died. But now they were still alive. They were the only people in this world who had ever truly loved me. After they were gone, even when my hands were covered in painful frostbite, no one ever asked if it hurt. I would never let anything happen to them again. Lost in thought, I looked up and saw Ethan a short distance ahead. He was hunched over, clearly in pain, struggling to endure it. Like that had anything to do with me. I shot him a cold glance and moved to walk around him. But just as I was about to pass, he reached out and blocked my way. "Move," I said sharply. Memories of my past life flashed through my mind. The way Ethan betrayed me, how his mother humiliated me, how I was abandoned like a used rag. My hatred surged to the surface, and I could no longer hide my disgust when I looked at him. "Autumn, what's wrong with you?" Ethan took a step closer, staring at me with confusion. "Why are you suddenly treating me like?" I instinctively took a step back. "Stay away from me or I'll scream and tell everyone you're harassing me." Ethan's eyes widened in shock, his face full of disbelief. He looked like he wanted to say something but held back. I couldn't be bothered to waste another second on him. Without another word, I turned and walked away. A voice filled with grievance sounded behind me. "Autumn, I'm hungry." "If you're hungry, Go home and find your mom, I replied coldly without looking back. It wasn't until I stepped into my house and saw my mother busy cooking in the kitchen while my father had just returned from work, drinking water from a large bowl, that my rebirth truly felt real. My mother was startled by my sudden actions, thinking something bad had happened to me at school. After some questioning, I told her I was just overwhelmed with happiness because I felt hopeful about getting into college. For the next few days, I completely ignored Ethan Carter at school, drawing a firm line between us. He used to bring half a cornbread biscuit from home, but ever since I started giving him my breakfast, he stopped bringing food altogether. These past couple of days he must have thought I was just playing games to get his attention, so he continued coming to school without food. As a result, he ended up fainting from hunger in class. I simply watched from the side, expressionless. When Lisa Green realized Ethan had fainted from hunger, she turned to me and scolded, "Why didn't you keep bringing him breakfast? I don't owe him anything. If you feel sorry for him, you can give him your own food," I replied. Lisa fell silent. After class, I walked home separately from Ethan. In my past life, he always trailed behind me at a distance, but today he wasn't there. A shiver ran through me. Today was the day. This was the moment in my past life when I had fallen into the lake and been rescued by Ethan. I had nearly forgotten such an important event. Up ahead was a steep slope, nearly vertical. The only way to descend was by gripping onto tree branches along the sides, carefully inching down. One misstep and you'd tumble down. At the bottom, beside the narrow path, lay a deep lake. There were other ways to get back to the village, but avoiding this route meant I wouldn't make it home before nightfall. I clenched my fists, silently swearing to myself this time I would not repeat the same mistake. Just as I was preparing to descend, I suddenly spotted someone approaching in the distance. My eyesight was better now that I was younger. I could see clearly it was Jessica Lane. She no longer had the refined, elegant look she did when she was older. The way she looked at me was filled with disdain and smugness. Right now, she was nothing more than a countryside-educated youth, just like me. Her skin was tanned from the sun, her frame thin and frail, her face worn and weary. In my past life, she blamed me for ruining her relationship with Ethan. Well then, this time I'd make sure she got exactly what she wanted. I wasn't certain what would happen next. Whether Jessica would fall into the water today. My right eyelid twitched uncontrollably, a bad omen. My gut told me that my past drowning incident wasn't just some unlucky accident, and soon I'd find out the truth. Quickly, I found a place to hide and watched the scene unfold. It wasn't long before Jessica reached the slope. She held on to the branches and began making her way down. I waited, but nothing happened. For a moment, I felt a tinge of disappointment. Maybe I really had just been unlucky in my past life. But I had walked this path countless times. Why had I only fallen that one day? Just as I was lost in thought, a sharp cry pierced the air, then a loud splash. I peered down the slope and saw Jessica thrashing in the lake, completely drenched and panicking. On the other side of the lake, Ethan had been waiting. The moment he heard the splash, he immediately jumped into the water and swam toward the source of the noise. So it was true. In my past life, I hadn't just fallen by accident. Ethan had orchestrated the whole thing. I had already confessed my feelings to him back then, and he had rejected me on the surface, yet secretly set up this whole situation, forcing me into a position where I would feel indebted to him for the rest of my life. And I had fallen for it. His mother had never treated me kindly either. "If it weren't for saving you," she had once said coldly, "my son would never have married a walking disaster like you. He's a professor now, you know. So many city girls would love to marry him. I don't know how many lifetimes of luck you burned through to end up in our family." Hatred boiled inside me, so intense that I bit my lip hard enough to taste blood. This time, I wouldn't let them get away with it. I'd make sure they suffered the consequences. Just as Ethan pulled Jessica from the water, his mother arrived with a crowd drawn by the commotion. "I swear I saw some mushrooms growing here yesterday," one villager said. "Now they're all gone. Which brat took them all? Oh my, who fell into the water? Let's go take a look." In my past life, I was the one who had been rescued. I had been wrapped in Ethan Carter's arms, my clothes soaked and clinging to me while the entire village watched. Within half a day, rumors had spread like wildfire. But this time, I was merely an outsider, quietly crouching on the hillside, watching the show unfold. From my vantage point, I saw Ethan freeze for a brief moment when he realized the person flailing in the water was Jessica Lane. But he quickly regained his composure. After hesitating for a second, he took advantage of Jessica's distraction and undid the buttons of his shirt. I blinked. In my past life, Ethan had written in his letters to Jessica that he had liked Tons High School, but had been too ashamed of his poor background to confess. Later, he claimed he was forced to marry me because I had clung to him. Looking at him now, it was clear he had never intended to leech off me for life. He had simply been waiting for the right opportunity to be with the woman he truly wanted, but the next second, Jessica fiercely shoved him away. "Who asked you to save me? Stop pretending to be kind," she snapped, clutching her soaked clothes tightly. Then, without another word, she scrambled to her feet and ran off. Ethan's mother, realizing he had rescued the wrong person, didn't make a scene like she had in my past life. But with so many people around as witnesses, the story of Ethan pulling Jessica, soaking wet and barely dressed, into his arms quickly spread throughout the village. I let out a sigh of relief. I thought this meant Ethan and Jessica would get married, but to my surprise, despite all the gossip, Jessica had no intention of marrying him. She was about to take the college entrance exam. If she passed, she could return to the city. She had no reason to tie herself down to Ethan. Even though Ethan was also planning to take the exam, there was no guarantee he would pass. In my past life, he had indeed gotten into college, but Jessica didn't know that yet. Back then, Ethan had only started pursuing her after he was accepted into a university in the capital. He had taken her to the movies, bought her little trinkets, all with my hard-earned money. He had found excuse after excuse to ask for cash, always playing the role of a struggling student. It seemed I had been the only fool blinded by love in my past life. I thought I had finally broken free from Ethan Carter in this life, but to my surprise he hadn't given up on me. Today was a school holiday. I had just finished gathering pig feed when I saw Ethan standing at my doorstep. The moment he spotted me, his eyes lit up, and he immediately walked over. "Autumn, you're finally back. I've been waiting for you all morning." I frowned. "What are you waiting for me for?" I had no interest in dealing with him. Ignoring him completely, I hoisted the bundle of pig feed and headed toward the backyard. "Wait, I have something to say." Seeing that I was ignoring him, Ethan suddenly grabbed the bundle from my arms and threw it to the ground, blocking my way. "Autumn, didn't you say before that you liked me?" His brows furrowed as he looked at me with a conflicted expression. I agreed. "As long as your family supports me through college, I'll marry you as soon as I get my degree." He placed both hands on my shoulders, his face full of reluctant compromise, as if he were making the ultimate sacrifice for me. I tightened my grip on the curved knife I had been using to cut the pig feed, resisting the urge to slice off those hands of his. Instead, I smiled coldly at him. "Ethan, do you like me?" The moment he heard my question, his expression visibly relaxed, as if this was the response he had been expecting. He paused, sighed, and said, "I don't like you right now, but if you keep trying, I believe we will develop feelings over time." Hearing those words, the deep resentment I had held for him in my past life suddenly felt meaningless. The pain of his betrayal, the endless suffering I had endured to earn his approval, humiliation of always lowering myself for him. How ridiculous it all seemed now. This man wasn't worth any of it. Not my hatred, not my love, not even my attention. I had been given a second chance at life. My focus should be on my family and my future, not on wasting another second on him. I smirked. "Well, that's convenient, Ethan. I don't like you anymore either. I hope you can be just as persistent. Don't bother me again with that." I bent down, picked up my bundle, and turned to leave. "Autumn, don't regret this," Ethan called out angrily. "Just wait until I get into college. When I get a good job, don't come begging me. By then it'll be too late." I scoffed, not bothering to reply. "Autumn, don't push your luck." Ethan Carter was getting frustrated now. "I admit you ignoring me these past few days has made me sad, but I'm giving you a chance now. Do you really need to see me marry Jessica Lane before you stop playing hard to get? Maybe it was because in my past life I had given him too much confidence. Enough for him to believe that I would never leave him. I turned around, raising an eyebrow in disbelief. You really think Jessica would want you? Keep dreaming. Fine, just wait until I marry her. Then we'll see who's laughing. Ethan stormed off angrily. Marriage? Perfect. Two selfish people deserved each other, without me playing along in their twisted games. I was curious to see how well they'd actually get along. Autumn, that wasn't right of you. A sharp voice chimed in. I have to say something about this. I turned to see Mrs. Wong, our neighbor, shaking her head at me. Look at Ethan. He's such a good boy, handsome, smart. If it weren't for his poor family, do you think he'd even consider someone like you? She was counting his virtues on her fingers, her tone full of disapproval. Clearly, she had heard the entire exchange. In my past life, after Ethan's family moved here, Mrs. Wong had always sided with them. She had stirred up trouble, encouraging Ethan's mother to impose rules on me, and making my life miserable. I smirked. Thanks for your concern, but I don't need it. Besides, I'm much better at studying than he is. A girl being good at studying? What's the use of that? In the end, you'll still have to marry and have kids. A man is your real security. You missed your chance with Ethan. I'd like to see what kind of sorry excuse for a husband you'll find now, she sneered. He won't be half as good as Ethan, that's for sure. What a joke. Mrs. Wong's own husband was a violent drunkard, lazy, always getting locked up for his poor work ethic. Every time he got drunk, he'd beat her and their kids so badly their cries could be heard throughout the village. My parents had stepped in to help twice, only to be mocked by him, told to mind their own business. And yet, despite being covered in bruises, Mrs. Wong would still defend him, insisting, every man hits his wife. At least mine cares enough not to beat me to death. Because my parents never raised a hand against me. She had always been envious and resentful. She took out all her bitterness in our family led to petty things, like spilling dirty fertilizer water in front of our house on purpose. Watch your mouth, I said coldly. She pointed a finger at me, her face full of contempt. You should be calling me auntie out of respect. What kind of attitude is that? Just as I was about to snap back, someone stepped in front of me, shielding me. You've got a filthier mouth than a mouse, a familiar voice said. Who do you think you are? Try insulting my sister again and see what happens. My eyes stung. It was my older brother. In my past life, after our parents died, we had grown distant, but when they were alive, he had always been my greatest protector. I took a deep breath and decided not to waste my energy on Mrs. Wong. Brother, are you hungry? I'll roast some sweet potatoes for you. You really are the only one who cares about me, he said with a grin. Seeing me tear up, he panicked and clumsily wiped my face, then turned around and launched into a string of curses at Mrs. Wong, sending her scurrying away in defeat. A month later, Ethan and Jessica actually got married. Since they weren't old enough to legally register their marriage, they just held a simple banquet. Jessica moved out of the commune and into Ethan's house. I went to watch the commotion at the wedding feast. Jessica kept giving me smug, provocative glances. I frowned. Did she also get reborn? 2 months later, the college entrance exam finally arrived. This time, I was extra cautious. I slept with the thickest blankets, only drank boiled water, and made sure to avoid anything that could upset my stomach. I refused to let history repeat itself. I would not miss the exam because of food poisoning again. Right before the test, Ethan did something unexpected. He approached me holding Jessica's hand, as if deliberately showing off. The two of them acted like the perfect loving couple. Then Ethan held out a red egg to me. Here, eat this. It'll bring you good luck. Eat it, Autumn. This will bring you good luck for the exam, Ethan Carter urged, his tone overly eager. You're not upset about my marriage, are you? So heartbroken that you can't even eat. I sneered. Thanks, but you two should keep your good stuff for yourselves. Without hesitation, I shoved the red egg back into Jessica's hand. I had no intention of eating anything given to me by Ethan. Something about it felt off. In my past life, right before the college entrance exam, Ethan had handed me a roasted sweet potato. Not long after eating it, I was stuck with the worst food poisoning of my life, so weak I could barely move. Now it was hard not to suspect that he had done it on purpose to keep me tied to him, forced to give up my future, so I could work and put him through school. Seeing that I refused to eat it, Ethan's expression darkened. With gritted teeth, he snatched the egg from Jessica's hand and tried to force it on me again. What's the meaning of this, huh? You won't eat our red egg? You can't stand to see us doing well. I dodged him like he was a madman. Completely unreasonable. But Ethan wouldn't let it go. He chased after me, determined to shove that egg into my hands. Eggs were expensive there. There was no way he'd be this generous without ulterior motives. This thing was definitely tampered with. I didn't want to waste any more time arguing. It wasn't like he could physically force me to eat it. Maybe I should just take it and toss it away later. But before I could decide, Lisa Green suddenly ran over. She saw us pushing the egg back and forth and assumed we were just being overly polite. Without hesitation, she snatched it from Ethan's hand, peeled it in a few quick motions, and stuffed it into her mouth. Perfect timing. I didn't eat enough for breakfast, she mumbled between bites. Since you're all just standing around, I'll eat it. Before we could even react, she swallowed it down and ran off. Sure enough, not long after the exam started, Lisa's face turned deathly pale. Then, with a loud thud, she collapsed onto her desk. A foul smell filled the air. She tried to endure it, but in the end, she had no choice but to weakly raise her hand and ask to be excused. She barely made it to the restroom. After that test, I stepped outside only to find Lisa waiting for me at the door. Her face was completely drained of color, her eyes full of rage. You owe me an explanation, she hissed. I ate your egg, and I couldn't stop having diarrhea. Autumn Carter, did you try to poison me? I swear I'll make sure you don't get through this exam either. A crowd had gathered, curious to see the drama unfold. I let out a cold laugh. Lisa, first of all, you stole that egg from me. I never gave it to you. Secondly, do you need glasses? That was a red egg, wasn't it? It was a wedding egg from Ethan Carter and Jessica Lane. If you have a problem, you should be taking it up with them. Lisa froze. I knew she had feelings for Ethan. In my past life, she had caused me plenty of trouble because of it. But this time, things were different. Ethan was already married and, thanks to sheer bad luck, had just ruined Lisa's exam. I wondered how she'd react now. That afternoon, I heard the news. Ethan and Jessica had been arrested during the exam, accused of poisoning someone's food. I kept a straight face, but inside I was cheering. Serve them right. By the time I got back to the village, the entire place was buzzing with gossip. Apparently, word had spread that Ethan and Jessica had laced Lisa's red egg with laxatives and were taken away by the authorities to settle things privately. Ethan's family had to pay Lisa $30 in compensation. Only then was the matter resolved, but their reputation was ruined. Before this, Ethan's mother had been known for being a bit aggressive and unreasonable, but people had tolerated her. After all, she was a widow trying to keep her family together. But now no one wanted to associate with them anymore. Good Lord, they're already drugging people at such a young age. Who knows what they'll do in the future? Meanwhile, families who had received red eggs from Ethan's wedding weren't too worried. It's just a laxative. It won't kill anyone, they reasoned. Besides, if we eat it and get sick, we can make them pay. $30 isn't a small amount, you know. Ethan's mother had always been stingy, hoarding every cent she could. But after spending money on Ethan and Jessica's wedding, and now losing $30 in compensation, their remaining savings weren't even enough to cover Ethan and his sister Rachel's schooling. In my past life, by this point, I had already married Ethan. He had paid $50 as my bride price. I never got 3 rounds in one sound. The coveted 3 luxury items: a bicycle, a sewing machine, a watch, and a radio. My parents and brother had opposed the marriage, unwilling to let me suffer. But I had been blinded by love, stubbornly insisting on marrying him. In the end, my parents had no choice but to agree. After the wedding, Ethan quickly found excuses to take back every penny of that $50 dowry. Then, after my parents passed away and my brother left, his family took everything. They took my home and left me with nothing. Even the money my parents had secretly hidden was ransacked by Ethan's mother. In my past life, After marrying into the Carter family, they never worried about money again. While Ethan was in school, I was pregnant but still had to work in the fields to earn labor points. When he became a professor and his salary was low, I took our child to set up a street stall to supplement our income. Ethan was embarrassed by it. He threw tantrums at home more than once, smashing things and yelling at me for making him look bad. But not once did he ever give me a cent of his earnings. If I didn't sell things on the street, how was I supposed to survive? Thinking about it now, I felt a renewed strength surge within me. So what if Ethan failed the college entrance exam? That was nothing. In my past life, he ruined my family, leaving me with nothing. This time, without me supporting him, I wondered what fate had in store for him, especially if he ever encountered a wild boar again. 2 months later, word spread in the village that someone had found a wild ginseng root in the mountains. It was supposedly very old, and when sold, it fetched over $100. Immediately, no one cared about work anymore. Every day, after finishing their tasks, villagers would rush to the mountains, hoping to strike it rich. In my past life, Ethan had been obsessed with getting rich. He wandered the back mountains daily looking for ginseng. When he couldn't find any, he stubbornly ventured deeper into the mountains, completely ignoring the dangers of wild animals like tigers and boars. At the same time, I was already pregnant. My father, wanting to provide me with better nutrition, had gone to the mountains to catch a wild pheasant. But instead of a pheasant, he ran into Ethan, who was being chased by a furious, red-eyed wild boar. Then my father died saving him. In this life, I refused to let history repeat itself. I clung to my father, speaking earnestly as I told him about a dream I had. I said that in my dream, he had gone to the mountains and been gored by a wild boar. He was seriously injured and not long after he passed away. My mother, devastated, followed him soon after. As I spoke, memories of my past life overwhelmed me. My parents' tragic deaths, the torment I endured at the Carter family's hands. Tears streamed down my face uncontrollably, my nose running, my eyes swollen red. My father had originally planned to go looking for Jeanning himself, but seeing me cry like this, he hesitated. In the end, he patted his chest and swore he wouldn't go. Only then did I finally relax. As for the other villagers in my past life, no one besides Ethan had dared to venture deep into the mountains after my father's accident. They all stayed away. There was no need to warn them. Who would believe me if I suddenly said there were wild boars lurking there? I waited, expecting to hear news that Ethan had been gored by a wild boar, but 3 days later, the one who died wasn't Ethan, it was Mrs. Wong's husband. He had gone into the mountains with Ethan and, in a bizarre twist of fate, died saving him. I heard the scene was gruesome, blood everywhere, but I couldn't wrap my head around it. Why would Mrs. Wong's husband save Ethan? That man was selfish and cruel. If he really encountered a wild boar, he wouldn't even save his own children, let alone Ethan. Mrs. Wong was completely stunned when she heard the news. She stormed into the Carter house like a madwoman, screaming and crying that Ethan had to pay with his life for what happened. Ethan's mother, despite being a loud and aggressive woman, was completely powerless in this situation. This was a human life. No matter how sharp her tongue was, Ethan had gotten off easy while Mrs. Wong's husband had died. So when Mrs. Wong slapped her across the face over and over, she didn't dare fight back. Her cheeks swelled red and bruised, but she endured it in silence. Mrs. Wong had always been beaten by her husband, but in this era, that was unfortunately common, so she had long grown used to it. But now, with no husband, 2 young children to raise, and the stigma of being a widow, her future was bleak. To her, the world had collapsed. Eventually, she went to the authorities demanding justice. For nearly half a month, she camped outside the Carter home, rolling on the ground, screaming and cursing, dragging her 2 kids with her. They ate the Carter family's food, making a scene every single day. Ethan's mother had no choice. In the end, she gritted her teeth and agreed to pay $500 in compensation. That was the final blow. The Carter family was now truly penniless. They had emptied out the last $20 they had, leaving them with a debt of $480. Forget about sending Ethan Carter and Rachel Carter to school. His family was now struggling just to put food on the table. Seeing that the Carters were drowning in debt, Jessica Lawn threw a fit. demanding a divorce from Ethan. Of course, his family refused to let her go. Jessica wouldn't back down. She threatened to smash her head against the wall if they didn't let her leave. Ethan's mother had already lost a fortune paying compensation and was full of pent-up rage. Seeing Jessica act like this only made her explode. She leaped up and slapped Jessica so hard she knocked her unconscious. Not long after, the results of the college entrance exam came out. That morning, my left eyelid wouldn't stop twitching, a sign that something was about to happen. Sure enough, within moments, there was a knock on the door. It was the village official, beaming with excitement. His smile widened even more when he saw me. In his hands, he held an admission letter from the most prestigious university in the country, the very letter I had once longed for my entire life. I unfolded the letter with trembling hands. There, printed clearly, were the words, Autumn Carter. An indescribable wave of emotion surged through me. This was the acceptance letter I had missed out on in my past life. I had lost the chance for 60 years, a lifetime of regret. Now holding it in my hands, it felt almost unreal. Congratulations, Autumn. You've really made something of yourself, the village official praised. You're the first college student from Tupou Village, a real golden phoenix rising from the nest. You've brought honor to our village. My parents took the letter, carefully reading it over and over, their faces filled with both joy and disbelief. My older brother was just as emotional. In my past life, he had struggled with his studies and gave up his opportunity so I could have a chance, but I had failed him. I had failed all of them. I had even indirectly caused my parents' deaths and driven a wedge between my brother and me. I had never seen him again before I died. But this time, I would make things right. Before long, the entire village gathered at my house, eager to see the commotion. People who had once mocked my parents for wasting money on educating a daughter, calling me a useless burden, were now singing my praises. Flattery poured out like free-flowing water, their smiles as bright as the sun. Of course, there were those who were jealous, throwing sour remarks. Others took the opportunity to suggest potential matches for me, eager to arrange a marriage. When the crowd finally dispersed, I collected my admission letter and turned to head inside, only to freeze at the sight of a very familiar figure. A frail, exhausted man stood in the distance, Ethan Carter. His eyes were full of longing and regret. Autumn, you've come back, haven't you? He looked at me as if I were a dream he had lost. Autumn, I finally understand. You were the one meant for me all along. He took a step closer, his voice full of nostalgia and hope. It's perfect. You got into college. Once I pass the exam, we can go to university together. I remained completely unmoved. His expression stiffened, but he quickly forced a smile, pretending not to notice my indifference. Why aren't you saying anything? He softened his tone, looking at me expectantly. If you want, I can file for divorce with Jessica right now. We can have a wedding banquet first, and as soon as you turn of age, we'll register our marriage. What do you think? I let out a cold laugh full of mockery. How ironic. In my past life, he had looked down on me, belittled me at every turn, and now our positions had completely reversed. Ethan was still chattering away, trying to weave his usual web of lies, attempting to drag me back into the mess that was his life. I cut him off before he could go any further. And what makes you think I, Autumn, would ever consider marrying an uneducated, scandal-ridden, divorced man? Ethan's confidence wavered, but he quickly masked it with an arrogant smirk. Autumn, you're still as stubborn as ever. I looked at him with complete indifference, as if he were nothing more than filth on the side of the road. In my past life, Professor Carter had always stood tall, belittling me with every word, but now he couldn't handle even a fraction of that disdain aimed back at him. His face contorted in fury, his jaw clenched, and without warning, he raised his hand to strike me. Autumn Carter, you're getting too full of yourself, he snapped. You were nothing but a dirty farm girl in your past life. You wasted half of my life, and I still gave you a son and a daughter. Think about this carefully. If you don't marry me now, those children of ours will never be born. I scoffed. Who the hell cares about those two ungrateful brats who sided with Jessica in the end? Before his hand could land on me, I swiftly kicked him between the legs. Ethan let out a blood-curdling scream and collapsed to the ground, clutching himself, rolling in agony. I didn't spare him another glance. Without hesitation, I turned, walked into my house, and slammed the door shut. I thought that would be the end of it, but that afternoon, Ethan's mother showed up at my doorstep, dragging Ethan and Rachel Carter with her. "Autumn, my dear," she said, plastering on a fake smile. "I know you've always loved my son. I've already made Ethan divorce that little Jessica Lane. You're the only daughter-in-law I recognize." Ethan's mother stood outside my house, shouting at the top of her lungs. "And look at this, you just got your college acceptance letter. It's a double blessing. Hurry up and come out so we can set a date for the engagement." It didn't take long for a crowd to gather, eager to watch the spectacle unfold. "Mrs. Carter, are you serious?" someone in the crowd snorted. "Autumn's about to be a college student. Why would she ever look at your son now?" "Exactly," another villager laughed. "Do you think we're all fools? Your family is drowning in debt, and your reputation is in the gutter. Autumn would have to be crazy to jump into that mess. You all don't know anything." Ethan's mother screeched. "Autumn may look all proper on the surface, but she's already been with my son. If she doesn't marry into our family, let's see who else would take her. She's nothing but used goods." The moment those words fell, the crowd exploded into murmurs and whispers. My brother, standing nearby, snapped. Without hesitation, he grabbed a shovel, ready to smash Ethan's mother's mouth shut. I quickly held him back. "Calm down, brother," I whispered. "They're slandering me on purpose. The more they escalate this, the worse it'll be for them when they're punished." I turned to the crowd, clapping my hands slowly. "Well said," I said, mocking my voice loud and clear. "You all heard that, didn't you? Every single one of you here is now a witness." I smirked. "I, Autumn Carter, have no interest in this pathetic excuse of a man. Uncle Jang," I turned to a respected elder in the crowd, "could you kindly report this to the authorities for me?" Ethan's mother's face twisted in panic. "These people are spreading false rumors just to trap me," I continued. "And if they can do this to me today, what's stopping them from doing it to someone else tomorrow? If we let them get away with it, then every girl in this village is at risk of being slandered just like I was." The expressions of the villagers immediately darkened. What if their own daughters became the next target of such vicious rumors? In this era, a ruined reputation was no different from a death sentence for a girl. Uncle Jang, who had always been friendly with my family, nodded firmly and ran off to report the case. Ethan's face flashed with fear, but he quickly covered it up with anger and arrogance. "Autumn, cut the act," he snapped. "Call him back. There's no need to involve the authorities." His expression twisted with malice. "I know exactly what kind of person you are. I can prove my mother was telling the truth. Otherwise, how would I know about the crescent-shaped birthmark on your waist?" The moment he said that, the crowd's murmurs turned to shock. My parents' faces went completely pale. I clenched my fists tightly. Of course, Ethan knew about my birthmark. He had memories from our past life just like I did. But now we had no connection whatsoever. For him to reveal something like this in front of so many people, he was trying to destroy my reputation completely. His words left me with only two choices. 1, die, 2, marry him. My hands trembled with rage. I had tried to stay far away from him in this life, yet he still clung to me like a parasite. Did he really think that if he forced me into a marriage, I'd become his obedient little servant again? If I ever found myself trapped in his household again, I would not hesitate to buy a bottle of rat poison and end his entire family myself. But suddenly, a thought struck me. I narrowed my eyes. "You're lying, Ethan," I said coldly. "I don't have any birthmark on my waist." His face stiffened. "I'd advise you to confess before the authorities arrive," I added. Then stepping closer, I lowered my voice so only he could hear. That day in the mountains, I wasn't the only one who saw what happened. Ethan's entire body tensed, his pupils shrank, his face turning ghostly pale. "Jessica's husband never saved you, did he?" I whispered. "You pushed him toward the wild boar and let him die. In your place, his breath hitched. I could practically hear his heartbeat falter. I had guessed right. Jessica's husband hadn't saved him. Ethan had sacrificed him just like he had sacrificed my father in my past life. Now everything was falling into place. My hatred for Ethan Carter grew even deeper. Unfortunately, I had been bluffing. I had no actual witness. If I did, exposing this would mean much more than just financial compensation. Ethan wouldn't just pay money. He'd be facing a bullet. It seemed Ethan realized this too. His face had gone completely pale, and he avoided looking at me altogether. His usual arrogance was nowhere to be seen. When the authorities arrived, Ethan didn't even try to defend himself. He admitted his guilt immediately. As for the slanderous rumors he and his mother had spread about me, there were plenty of witnesses to prove their lies. I pursued the case to the fullest extent. In the end, both Ethan and his mother were arrested and sentenced to 6 months of labor on a remote farm. Even so, my reputation had already been ruined by the Carters, but I didn't care. I had long given up on love. As long as I could give my family a good life and contribute to my country, that was more than enough for me. I saved up my tuition money by selling goods at a street stall. After finishing university, I continued my studies. Eventually, I entered a research institute, dedicating myself to chip technology development. 10 years later, I returned to Tupou village. Everything had changed. After leaving for school, I had handed over the street stall business to my older brother, taking a share of the profits while also advising him on future economic policies. With the right knowledge and strategies, his business had grown tremendously. He had even started his own company. We had bought multiple courtyard houses in the capital years before the real estate boom. We had also invested in several stocks that multiplied in value. By now, we had achieved complete financial freedom. We donated a significant amount of money to the county, helping build roads and bridges in Tupou village. The village was no longer the impoverished place it had been a decade ago. The country was thriving, and people were no longer starving. They could afford new clothes and live better lives. As for me, I had never pursued love again. I had devoted my entire life to my career, and I had no regrets.